I got was from the city of Strongsville. They said they would be absolutely delighted to accept a gift, but no conditions. They said as soon as they took it over, they would sell it for development, and the money they got from the sale, they would use to build a service garage, which they would name the Henry Ross Service Garage. And they couldn't understand why I was insulted. So then I did a lot of research, and I found that if I set up a nonprofit corporation and gave the whole thing to the public, administered by the nonprofit corporation, that would make it exempt from real estate taxes and assessments and all of that stuff. So I spent quite a bit of time doing that. This happened in 1962. And once I did that, the city officials had apoplexy because they were not collecting any more taxes, not one penny. So for the next 8 years, for the next 10 years, they dragged me into court 8 times trying to get rid of it so that they would be able to collect taxes on it again. And every time the court ruled in our favor and against the city of Strongsville. So they haven't bothered us now for quite a few years because they know they can't possibly win. So it's here. And the only way that this can continue after I'm gone, people think that just because Mark and I work for nothing, when I die, some other nut is going to come along and work for nothing. That is not going to happen. Nobody can afford to work for nothing. They're going to have to be paid. And this place really needs 10 full-time working gardeners to maintain it the way it should be maintained. So we've been working at building up an endowment fund. And the point is to build up enough of an endowment fund so that it would produce enough income to hire the people to take care of it. And right now, we're a little over $1 million.
Oh, good for you.
Well, people think that's a lot of money, that's a lot of money. Well, that doesn't even produce enough interest to hire one person with today's interest. So just think how much this is going to have in order to maintain it after I'm gone. And the way this is set up, it's set up as an open green space preserve, preferably a garden, as it is. Now, if there isn't enough money in the endowment fund to maintain the gardens would have to be eliminated, and this would have to be some other kind of an open space, even if it was only an open woodland. But there would never be any commercial buildings, industrial buildings, residential buildings, municipal buildings, nothing. Just open space of one kind or another. Now, if there are enough people who appreciate it enough to donate money to the endowment fund so that it will produce enough income to maintain the gardens, it will continue as it is. If not, the gardens will no longer be here after I'm gone. So it depends on the people out there. So anyway, 12 or 13 years ago, Mark showed up, and then now there's 2 of us who take care of the place. And we are primarily interested in the most unusual, rare plants, and that's what is mostly in here. There are some common things, but most of the things are plants that you won't see anyplace else in this country. Mostly variegated plants, plants with golden foliage, plants with silver foliage, plants with red foliage, anything but green. So I don't know if any of you are interested in herbs, but the only herbs that we are interested in are those that are ornamental or those that are fragrant. And we do not have an herb garden as such. The herbs are used as ornamentals and they're mixed in with the other plants. So as we go around, if you have a question on anything, if you just yell out, I'll be very happy to comment. Piece of land back in 1949. I was at Ohio State and I was coming home one weekend to visit my parents in Cleveland. Now don't forget, 1949, this was way out in the country. It was much nicer than it is now. Right now they're widening that damn road and it's going to be commercial from end to end, just like Euclid Avenue in downtown Cleveland. This is going to be the only green spot in the entire area, and that's giving them apoplexy. Because they imagine how much they can get in taxes on 32 houses and 12 places like this one. But what most people don't realize is it costs more for the city to provide the services to houses and commercial places than they get in taxes. So the city's really better off if this stays as a green space. But anyway, I was coming home to visit my parents in the middle of the winter. Everything was covered with snow, and there was a for sale sign out in the front. So I came out the next day and I looked it over and I liked the location of the place way out in the country and the shape of the parcel. So I borrowed the money and I bought it. So spring came, the snow melted, and what happens? This is a blue clay swamp completely covered with blackberry brambles and weeds.
Oh, no.
Nothing would grow, absolutely nothing would grow. So anyway, since that time, we've hauled in over 10,000 truckloads of horse manure and piled it on top of the clay. These beds now are all about 4 feet deep of pure compost, and we're still adding it every year. So now the plants are happy. They're doing very well. So it's been a struggle, but it's here.
First tree when we came in.
Which one?
It had something.
Those are flowering buckeyes.
Oh.
They get red spikes of red flowers, like great big red hyacinths in the spring. And those nuts right now. It's just like a walnut, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a seed bud. Things start to bloom here at the middle of February, and every 10 days or 2 weeks is something entirely different blooming until about Thanksgiving time. This is called flowering kale. It's really a vegetable.
Do you miss having your
As the weather gets cold, this center will be pink or white or red, and it looks like a rose. And that'll stay until about the 1st of November. You can eat it, but it's really much too pretty to eat. Although you can buy them at the market when they're in color. People use them for a centerpiece.
I got to get my mulch done earlier in the year. Now, is this an edible something?
That's the regular red. Those are green zinnias, and the vines on the snow fence are the blue-flowered morning glories. So they're going to be absolutely gorgeous when they bloom. Early spring bulbs, and then there were lots of daffodils and hyacinths and tulips and all kinds of stuff. And then it was filled with double flowering bananas and all different colors. They're all gone dormant. And again, this is a lot lower than it is now, so I spent a week spreading 5 dump truckloads of manure in here, about 6 more inches. And of course, this will break down into about maybe 3 inches when it settles.
Bring your 5-gallon containers and dig out a perennial. $5 a
You'll get
gallon.
a bullet in the head.
You dig them.
A lot of this, you dig them and I won't be able to replace them.
Oh, well, there's a lot of stuff in the trails that could be.
We're particularly this is a canna called Bengal tiger. I made this. I didn't point it out to you. The whole good time. Now this is the canna that the one with the best red foliage. This one gets a red flower. You can see the one over there getting a red flower on it. And here's another variety with variegated leaves. This is called Tropicana.
I like
Here's
that.
a bigger plant.
I like that variegated leaf. That's really amazing.
All of these beds were solid and they were about this high when they were in bloom. All kinds of colors, just absolutely beautiful. But the thing about lupins is they need a mycorrhizal organism, which is a little bacterial. Came out here, and don't forget this was all lower than it is now. And this was just a narrow little squiggle in the ground, maybe 9 inches wide and 4 inches deep. And there's about 400 acres that drains through here. This was a stream, a natural stream that ran through here. And all that water came pouring down like Niagara Falls, and it couldn't make it through that little stream, so it all overflowed, and this was all underwater. So years ago, I decided to transform it into this canal. So this side I worked on with a pick and a shovel for a year and a half, dug it all out, found broken concrete along the roadside, and laid up the walls on both sides, and mixed concrete in the wheelbarrow and poured it in the bottom. So that did this side. And this one was a lot bigger and a lot deeper, so I had to have a backhoe come in and dig it out. And they dug out all the soil and piled it on both sides, about 8 feet high and 10 feet wide. And I had no money to hire anything else, so I had to grade it all out by hand. And then again, broken concrete along the sides, and a mixed concrete in the bottom, so it's a solid concrete. And when I did that, then there was about 6 inches of water coming down here all of the time. It was absolutely wonderful. I had a pump down in there, and I was able to run 4 sprinklers 24 hours a day and water stuff like crazy. I had all kinds of water. And I was even thinking of putting a generator down at the end and generating my own electricity, which would have worked. But one day I came out in the middle of August when it was real dry, bone dry. I'm hysterical. What happened to my water? I went running down to City Hall. I said, what did you do to my water? They didn't know anything about it, they said. So I drove around in the back, and I found they had put in a housing development in back of us, and in front of one of the houses, in the tree lawn, there was a wet spot that would never dry up. And they came out, and they dug down, and they found that the water main was completely busted open. 1 million gallons of water a day was coming through here every day for 8 years before they finally discovered it. That's enough water to fill Lake Erie. And they never knew that it was missing. So when they fixed that, the only time we ever get water coming down here is when it rains. And if it rains real good, it'll be right up to the top. It's a raging torrent coming through here. Article is the one that is the more interesting. That was an article from the newspaper in 1984.
Yeah, but you're noticing a change in the temperatures starting in 1986, when the weather got hot and there were repeated droughts and hot spells. Yeah, 86 was kind of your watershed year.
When I came out, I wanted a pond so bad that I worked on this with a pick and a shovel for a year and a half. I had it about a fourth dug before my brother came along and gave us the money to hire a bulldozer and have it finished. So that's been there ever since.
How deep is it?
Well, this started out as about 5 feet deep, but over the years it had gradually silted in, and I think it's probably 2.5 or 3 feet deep now. But the mistake I made with this, when I first started, I was operating as a nursery. I was growing all kinds of plants in rows. There were plants in rows in here, and there were drain tile in here, draining the water off into the canal. And when I built this, what I did was to dig the soil out and just pile it along the side there to make a bank. And it never occurred to me to find where the outlet from that tile is. There's a tile somewhere in the bottom, 2 feet below the bottom, that is draining this all out. It'll rain real heavy and it'll come up about a foot higher than it is, and the next day it's down to the way it is. So it's really something. Not my name, I mean I named a lot of plants. A red Monarda, Gardenview Scarlet, and Hosta, Solar Flare, and an ajuga called Arctic Fox. So quite a number of things that I introduced.